Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the El Venado Yellow Honey Processed Costa Rica from One Line Coffee. And there's the bag right there. And we originally said One Line is based out of Columbus, Ohio, but they have listed on here Heath, Ohio. So for purposes of what their bag says, we're going to go with Heath, Ohio for this review. But they were featured in our most recent blind taste test rankings video as part of a viewer subscriber recommendation suggestion series where they finished 5th place out of 7 coffees on that day. And they were a suggestion to us by our good buddy Greg. So shout out to and thank you to Greg for the suggestion. And that kind of leads into a little bit of a debate that I've had with Greg for a while now, in which I have argued that the variety is just as, if not more important than the origin itself. Because Greg admits that he's not the biggest fan of Costa Rican coffees, but he is a huge Kenyan coffee lover. So I've argued that since this is an SL28, then it's going to have a lot more Kenyan-like characteristics, and it might be something that he enjoys a little more than he would with a lot of other Costa Rican coffees. And that was demonstrated in our blind taste test video, as I kind of expected this to be the most Kenyan-like cup of coffee, and it was by far the most Kenyan-like cup of coffee on that table. So we'll see if that theme continues to hold true. This right here is day 18 of this coffee. And recipe we went with for One Line, well, I went with a 16.671 water to coffee ratio brewed at 205 degrees Fahrenheit, and I liked it best through the Chemex. Now, One Line does have a recipe on their bags and on their website, which is a 17-to-1 at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think the reason that they have that is to kind of encompass their wide range of roasting profiles, as they have some really light coffees. Like this right here is definitely on the lighter side, but they also have a fair bit of medium and dark roasted coffees as they describe themselves. So for roast profile, I'll go with this being on the lighter side of that light medium American spectrum. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. So day 4, which was that blind taste test rankings day, and it definitely needed a lot of time to settle. They have listed on their bags here that you should probably wait until after day 10 to start brewing their coffee, but given that we had to put it in that video, we had to work with what we had, and it just left a kind of okay first impression. Very savory Kenyan-like components to the cup of coffee, but what I noticed was that there was plenty of potential sweetness to the cup of coffee, and that left it relatively promising. So we're going to see if we might be able to build off of that. Day 6 went back, and again, I know I should wait till post day 10, and post day 10 is when we're going to get the best results, but more of the same. We'll likely still need to give it a bit of extended rest, but felt that the honey processing did add to the potential in terms of sweetness that it did have. So I was saying that with that processing method, we might see more of the sweetness in general, but no problems with the clarity, and there was just a fair bit to work with from this cup of coffee. Day 8, plenty of the what a lot of people like to describe as juicy body and Kenyan-like characteristics yet again. Tart red fruits in abundance, most dominant trait to this cup of coffee. Slight chocolate bar-like base, but for the most part just red fruit dominant, which was a theme and consistent throughout this coffee. Day 10, finally starting to see some nice improvements in the cup as there was a bit of increased sweetness, picking out more of the chocolate in the cup at this time, and it's complemented ever so slightly by a ever so slight candy sweetness to it. Kenyan red fruits remain on the forefront of this cup of coffee, so I'm still very Kenyan-like cup of coffee. It's very consistent in that sense. Day 12, as we mentioned, coffee continues to be consistent with incremental increases overall. We're going to try some other brew methods to see if maybe we can get a little bit more from this cup of coffee. As it cools down, it remains really red fruit dominant, but was just kind of looking for maybe some additional characteristics to it rather than just the two pretty distinct and dominant characteristics up to this point. Day 13, adjusted to One Line's recipe, and that's why I'll say One Line's recipe actually worked really well, and maybe it could have been because we brewed this one through the Chemex, and that's why we liked it best through the Chemex, but was starting to see a lot of what they had listed as those raisin flavor notes. I was seeing the candy sweetness as maybe something akin to a grape Jolly Rancher. It was ever so slight, but when brewed through this method, I was able to pull it out a lot more. It toned down a lot of the red fruits, and as a result, it was the best day of cup of coffee I had had to that point, and even post that point. Day 16, coffee remained consistent throughout, very Kenyan-like characteristics throughout with a slight bit of additional components ranging from that slight chocolate base to what felt like a kind of graham cracker-like crust. So I think a lot of people like to say maybe like a pie crust or something like that, and that could entirely be the buttery flavor notes that they have listed on here, but it was a little bit on the sweeter side. So really liked that additional aspect to it. Slightly sweet, but mostly berry savory, dominant throughout the time drinking it. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. And 3 level 4s, and they're very Kenyan-like level 4s, so let's run through those real quick. Finish, actually doesn't have the most dominating and lasting finish. It does settle off nicely, has those red fruit finishes, which is why the berries, of course, at a level 4. And then the savoriness, which again is also that Kenyan-like characteristic to it, that very savory sort of, well, T-word tomato that comes from this cup of coffee. But yeah, those 3 level 4s right there, those are the only things that hit that level 4 mark. We have quite a few level 3s as well. So the cleanliness, I always say when a washed Kenyan scores a level 3 for cleanliness, that's about as good as it typically gets for me. So having that as a honey processed at a level 3, I think that this was a great job in terms of the cleanliness, so I think that that's really nice. Body, yes, that's described, juicy body of Kenyan-like cups of coffee. Yes, that's very much there. Sweetness, level 3, that's about perfect, honestly. I felt that it was a little sweeter than I had expected, especially off of that first impression. So I gotta give them credit for the sweetness, and it is in equal marks to the acidity as well as the florals. So overall, that part of the tasting wheel looks pretty nice to me. And then the chocolate, which is a little toned down on this day, but yeah, I was definitely feeling it a lot throughout the time drinking this coffee. So that's right there, slight bit of smokiness, slight bit of bitterness. I honestly don't think that there's too much else worth discussing in this tasting wheel. Apologies for the construction noise in the background, but yeah. All right, my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I mean, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. It was a very Kenyan-like cup of coffee from start to finish, and those aren't necessarily my favorite coffees in general, but I always do find it funny that I enjoy coffees from other origins that have Kenyan-like characteristics far more than Kenyan coffees that have Kenyan-like characteristics. So as a result, this one grew on me ever so slightly, and I think as a whole, I was just kind of impressed with how similar it was to a Kenyan coffee. I feel like if you would have tossed this coffee in a blind taste test with, I don't know, 4 or 5 other Kenyan coffees, I wouldn't be able to tell that this was the non-Kenyan coffee on that table. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to is, I mean, anybody that does love their Kenyan coffees. I feel like this is a pretty nice fit for you. It's very much that same sort of thing where if you're curious if other origins can maybe match the similar traits of an origin that you very much enjoy, then I think this is a good fit. It's had a lighter profile in general for American coffees, and I think that that did kind of contribute to the way that the flavors were coming out from this cup of coffee. So as a result, I felt like it was pretty well rounded just in general. But for the most part, I think I'll leave this review at that. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee or anything else from One Line, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it, or them as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the El Venado Yellow Honey Processed Costa Rica from One Line Coffee. Thank you for watching.